What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
What's up, Rebels? Welcome back to Rebel Radio, the weekly show where I talk to the rebels who are shaping youth culture. We find out how they do it, why they do it, and what you can do to get a little piece of the pie for yourself. It's also the only show that features new music every week from our friends over at EDM.com. I'm your host, Josh Levine, and last week I told you about a live episode coming up with Ali Shaheed Muhammad of A Tribe Called Quest. That's part of the NEWSTORY at LA Times Festival of Books. That's going down Saturday, April 21st in Los Angeles. I hope you're coming to that. I hope to see you there. Get your tickets at events.latimes.com. It's definitely going to sell out, so make sure you get a ticket. And my guest this week is Clint Schaff. He's one of the producers of NEWSTORY at Festival of Books. He works at the LA Times. He helped to create the Dirty John podcast. He's got some great stories about his career of creating innovation within large companies. He really lives his life by discovering interesting stories and helping people and businesses tell them. Some really good stuff coming up today with Clint Schaff, right after our EDM.com track of the week. Yo, that was Bro with Running Out, the EDM.com track of the week. If you like that one, get over to EDM.com for more new music. And now let's get into the interview with Clint Schaff.
It's running out, yeah, it's running out.
Dude, this is exciting, man. I know we've been talking about it for a long time. I know you're one of our few guests that have come and observed.
I'm a groupie. I'm a Rebel Radio groupie. You know?
That's dope, man. It's like we've been doing the show almost 3 years, and you know, whenever I learn that someone actually listens or likes the show, I'm like a kid on Christmas. It's so it's such an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, you got a unique voice out there for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure we talk about NEWSTORY.
Yeah.
And what we're doing and you're doing and all that. I'm really excited about that. But I want to talk about you first.
All right.
Well, let's promote NEWSTORY.
Yeah, let's do it.
We have that.
Let's warm up.
Absolutely. So, LA Times Festival of Books sounds like I don't know. Festival of Books doesn't sound incredibly timely, but it's a huge festival.
Well, book sales are up more than
Is that right?
they have been in history. Yeah.
Okay.
More people are buying books right now than ever before.
Interesting.
So that's pretty exciting. However, yes. So we LA Times Festival of Books, this long-standing franchise, beloved amongst bibliophiles, I think they're called, and Angelinos, left and right. 150,000 people came last year.
Wow.
It's been going for 20 plus years. And this year, again, at USC. And this year we wanted to expand the aperture of the event to not just talk about books, but also to talk about the storytelling that is central to Los Angeles. So that's,
sure.
Plenty of literate people here, but when you think of LA, you think television, film, music,
right.
Performance, increasingly VR, AR, podcasts like this. And we want to create a place for those stories to be told as well, in addition and alongside books. So we're basically calling it, NEWSTORY, creative storytelling beyond the book,
nice.
Looking at all those different forms and mediums. And it's kind of interesting as we worked on the programming, it became about those mediums, but also became about just emerging voices. And as this franchise hopefully grows year over year, I'm excited about also highlighting like non-traditional voices of people who are coming out. We have leaders of the women's movement coming. We have Martellus Bennett, who is one of the NFL players who had been taking a knee and whatnot, and some cool voices in that regard. And so we're really stoked, but really stoked to have you there with Hip Hop Royalty.
Yeah, I'm excited. So thank you for inviting me to do the show. I was I was excited about that. I've done a few on stage, and I want to do more. And it's I always learn something about myself every time I get up there.
Yeah.
And then we got Ali Shaheed Muhammad from
Yes.
Tribe Called Quest, who's a hero of mine.
Me too.
And that's gonna be great.
It's literally like the dopest get of the festival. I'm super
that
stoked.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
Nice.
there's a lot of people I'm fans of, but on a personal note, I'm a hip hop head, and
do
there's
you
nothing,
listen
there's
to-
no group more important to me than A Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Ali Shaheed Muhammad kind of represents the storytelling beyond his pedigree with that group, but with the podcast, with his work scoring Luke Cage, and more. I think that's television, and not just television, but the new exciting form of streaming television and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then the podcast, which he's done for a couple different networks and platforms, and of course his music pedigree. So I'm over the moon about it.
He seems like an unlikely guy to do microphone check.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the show. I think it's great. Some of my favorite interviews have been on that show, but and I don't know that much about him, so I'm going to learn a lot about him thanks to you.
People can say the same about you though, because you all have
Yeah?
James and I were talking about this. You all have like similar chill demeanors.
Oh, yeah.
So I love that. I think that's a rarity when there's a lot of people who have a big voice online, or screaming or have like a shtick that is supposed to bring, they think is going to bring more clicks to their content. I think it's cool to have people who are themselves, who are just curious about other people but also have a few stories to tell. So
Well, I'm gonna drink a lot of espresso before I get up on stage with him and try to amp up the crowd a little bit.
good thing there's food trucks at NEWSTORY
Nice.
at the LA Times Festival of Books.
Exactly.
I'm sure there's a coffee somewhere there. Just check out.
I'm sure there is. Cool. Well, I'm excited to do that. That's April 21st.
April 21st, 22nd. You're on
Yeah.
the 21st at
Yeah.
1, I think, or 1:30?
Who else is on the show? What? Give me some.
Oh, yeah. Well, other folks we've got Moby in conversation with Bob Lefsitz,
Nice.
also on the podcast stage. We've got Lucinda Williams with Scott Goldman from the Grammy Museum.
Oh.
We have the folks from Mortified, who tell stories across books. And,
Yeah, Dave's been on the
everything.
show.
Oh, dope.
him.
I love him. I also just, he's been so cool to prepare his panel with.
Is that right?
He has the sickest panel about conversations around teen angst and
cool.
and entertainment.
Yeah, he's the guy for that.
He has the creator, along with him, the showrunner for Saved by the Bell. And who's has worked on a million other great
Yeah, I'm
shows,
sure.
including like Happy Days and stuff. And then older guy, and then the female creator of On My Block and
Oh, cool.
of MTV's Awkward. So I think that's gonna be a super cool conversation. We've got the Second City coming. We have a bunch of other cool podcasts. We have Anara George from The Bird and the Bee.
Mm-hmm.
Bandana Hart, who has a show called We Speak Dance, is going to have like a dance performance, talk about storytelling as dance. I mentioned some of the more activist-oriented stuff, bunch of panels, multicultural content creators, the whole nine. So it's going to be a really fun time.
Nice. Well, for anyone who's in LA, 21st, 22nd of April, come out to the LA Times Festival of Books, NEWSTORY.
For sure.
Come see Rebel Radio and come see a bunch of
No
other
doubt.
great
And
shows.
peep the whole lineup at latimes.com/newsstory. You can see it there.
Dope. All right, let's talk about you.
All right.
Well, I always like to start and kind of dig into what kind of person you are, and obviously we've known each other for a long time, and you're one of the people that like. There's just so many layers, and always a new interesting story that I would never have imagined.
Thanks.
Like wrapping your wedding vows. That video was incredible, just as an example. But so let's go back kind of to the beginning. Tell me about falling in love with music for the first time.
Oh, for sure. I'm from a small town in North Dakota called Mandan. So even as a young kid, it was just about, I'm really thankful for where I grew up in a lot of ways, but I just looked for every opportunity I could to get out of state. So it was
Sure.
like, join any group, apply for any competition, do anything that like gets you on a bus somewhere or on gets you to Minneapolis or wherever.
Right.
And
That's the big city close by.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Close by, meaning like 6-7 hours. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So music was the way of the less costly, more frequent version of that, right? So, I think that my first music I fell in love with, there's a couple summers there where it was like Phil Collins, Michael Jackson,
Uh-huh.
Fat Boys,
Nice.
Beastie Boys, License to Ill. You know, that was cool. What all the music had in common was basically steady drum beat. But hip hop in particular had that ability to get me from my geography to someone else's experience, and like really, I mean, it's changed my life big time. I mean, this was 1985-ish, and I'm in the small town of North Dakota, and I'm listening to, you know, old school Public Enemy records and hearing about stuff that I had never heard about in school or through my family or anywhere else, and some of which I didn't understand, and some of which I'm still learning about, frankly. But that planted some seeds in my developing brain that completely changed everything about me.
What was the what did it mean to be a hip hop fan in that setting where you grew up?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. What's interesting is, I mean, as hip hop kind of blew up from early, mid '80s to now. In the beginning days, I remember it was like kids. My junior high yearbook is all littered with things like "You're gonna be a great rapper." It's like terrible. Right? Yeah, because we would like perform at all the school shows.
Yeah.
And,
so you were rapping.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and would dance and stuff. Not very well, probably, but but anyone who knows me fairly well has seen me perform "Mama Said Knock You Out" somewhere. And there's hundreds of videos. It's still a monthly occurrence now today. But it was back then too. I mean, I was literally on the our junior high basketball team. Had an all-female cheerleading squad, and I would go out and do selected lines from LL Cool J "I'm Bad" on stage at the junior high basketball games.
Amazing.
So it was I was like a novelty probably though to my peers, to answer your question. What's interesting about it is I grew up with a bunch of kids who were also into hip hop, including my best friend and growing up, Eric Piella. His older brother was in a rap group, what we called it, called Ready and Willing, which had like gotten an audience with like Puffy and the Craig Mack, early days, and and he's like a kid from North Dakota who happened to, he was like the John B of his hip hop group kind of guy. But as a result, I was reading The Source back 90 or so. I imagine I'm got to be one of no more than 5 people who subscribed to The Source in North Dakota in 1990.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. And it was interesting to see as folks, and I also, what was interesting, mainstream rap was so popular. It was Hammer and whatever. And I still don't hate on that stuff. I think Hammer is the most underrated in the game. Just because people refuse to acknowledge the significance of that era, that pop rap. But it was really fun and got the party started. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting because, you sort of describe trying purposely to be an outsider, right? And I think, a lot of the stories we've heard about people that, like hip-hop was outsider music for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the stories are people who felt like outsiders to begin with, and then therefore were sort of drawn to hip-hop as their soundtrack or their and then they form community around that. Almost sounds like for you is kind of like the opposite, because you were it sounded like there wasn't a hip hop community where you were growing up, and so it was you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dozen of my friends too, all of which have done something related to industry, and several of which work in hip hop and labels now. But yeah, it was different than that. We weren't rebelling from anything, but I like to think my consumption and self-declared citizenship in hip hop came from an interest in travel and service. It sounds so weird, but it was like I wanted to know experiences that weren't my own, and not from from a very positive standpoint, and then also. There were important stories being told by people who weren't getting to tell stories elsewhere.
Yeah.
and I wanted to be a part of that. However that meant, if that meant buying CDs, or getting singles, or nowadays if that means trying to put my money into artists I think are doing cool things. But that I guess that's funny. I mean, it sounds so serious of an answer, but that was true at like 12 maybe. Yeah.
How do you do that now? How do you find what'd you say? Find stories that aren't your own. Like, what does that look like today?
I mean, part of that is just like being really social with others and asking what they're into, and looking for things that are different from whatever I'm already into. So a lot of times now that means, I mean, I almost exclusively listen to hip hop. I want to be one of those people who says, I listen to all kinds of stuff. Yeah, like I don't. I listen to hip hop almost exclusively. But so I make a conscious effort now.
New
to do
and
the
old?
opposite. Yeah, new and old. I mean, a lot of old, but yeah. And I'll say, now I'm like trying to say, to my wife, who also likes hip hop but likes other stuff, like, what are you into right now? She's like, Macintosh Brown. Who the hell is that? I don't know who that is.
Okay.
Listen to it. Oh, this isn't bad,
Yeah.
And it's different music for a different time and place.
Sure.
And that's just on music, but on all things, it's like, what's interesting in my own conversations, asking people, what are you into right now? Are you working on anything creatively, or what have you read, or whatever? And then also listening to other great media that's asking us questions, including Rebel Radio.
Yeah.
One of my favorite segments is when you get into, at the end, like, what are you watching? What do you listen to? That kind of thing. I'm often hitting pause on the, pulling over on my car, hitting pause and being like, I haven't heard of that book. I got to get that.
That's cool. Yeah, that's
or at least
kinda
look
why
at it.
I
At
do
least
that.
read a review of it or
Right.
something, so I can at least kind of appetizer sample that other things that have had a big impact on others.
Yeah, absolutely. And can we talk about the Israel trip?
Yeah, sure.
So, because that's kind of an example of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I applied for it's called a reality trip, I think, from the Schusterman Foundation, where I'll be joining about 50 other storytellers on a trip to Israel in June. And I believe the agenda is that we meet, a TV station, some creatives, all kinds of different storytellers in Israel. And that's, on the surface, kind of a random thing for me to do. I've never been to Israel, never been to the region. I'm not Jewish. I'm not previously affiliated with this organization, but I'm super intellectually curious, and the storytelling in this foundation is grounded in service as well. It's from a values, a cultural perspective, and which vibes well with mine. And I'm stoked about. A lot of people will be like, take a week off work, fly across the country with a bunch of strangers. I don't know, But I'm just like, the serendipity.
That sounds amazing.
It does sound amazing, right? I didn't undersell it very well. But the serendipity that can come from that is exciting, and I go into those kind of situations with a lot of confidence that someone in that amongst that 50 or someone I meet there or whatever is going to be a lifelong or decade-long collaborator. And all kind of things will happen. I mean, again, this isn't unique to me. This is like all of us. That's how we, your partner, your spouse, your friends, or whatever. It all comes through random serendipity a little bit. I just like to press the gas on it and enhance that a little bit more by putting myself in positions, making investments in things, serving, and just trying to be deliberate about it.
Yeah, but one of the things that stands out to me is like, you seem to have no fear. Like from getting up on stage, like as a kid, which I didn't know that you'd done, to now to karaoke, to like flying across the country with a bunch of strangers or across the world. Like from the outside, you look pretty fearless.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for saying that, but I don't know if that's very true either. I think what separates me from a lot of the culture shaping storytellers and content creators that I admire and try to support is that they really seem to have no fear. They go out and put in the 10,000 hours to do their craft well.
Sure.
Whereas I have and it's worked out pretty well for me in life, so I'm not mad at myself, but I operate out of fear a lot. I'll often look at the array of options. I'm a really interested person. I'm somewhat interesting, but I'm more interested than I'm interesting. And I'll look at the array of things, paths or opportunities that are in front of me that have me pretty excited. How am I going to spend my Monday? All right, I could do a lot of things. I could go talk to Josh. All right, well, that sounds more interesting. And of that array of things, which one feels safe and I feel like has the best worst case scenario and also has good positive outcomes. But that's worked out pretty well to take the safest of the exciting options.
Okay.
But sometimes I do want, if I could delete that fear or use that fear as motivation, maybe sometimes there's a more exciting option in that set that I'm not.
Can you think of something you would have done had you not been
afraid
afraid of it?
Well, I mean, there's a reason. Most of the folks who are in my peer set or people I admire are entrepreneurial, and that they own they publish their own media, or they own their own business, or they run their own agencies, or they do their own podcasts. And I do a lot of that stuff, but I often don't attach my name to things as directly as that on an ongoing basis. And so if I feel like, I'll take a victory lap and say I think I've been an early adopter on a bunch of stuff. This is a weird example, but in college I had some deep internships with the sustainability framework before everyone was talking about sustainability, and 10 years probably before Inconvenient Truth and all that. And I was like, that was a thing. I was going to go really deep on that as a career for a year. That was the thought I had.
Sure.
But instead, I was a tourist who dabbled in that, and instead of going deep on, who knows what kind of impact and wealth I could have created had I gotten involved, or but instead of, so for better, for me it's like a continuum of like depth versus breadth.
Okay.
And if I can, and I've chosen to go mostly on the side of breadth.
Yeah.
And I change up my career path every half decade. I change jobs every few years. And again, I take all those experience with me, and I'm really happy with how that's created my life and my career. But if I really dedicated myself, for 10 years to the same idea, I'm pretty sure it would win.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's funny, just a family story that we don't talk about very often. My dad was in the Air Force, and he had a part-time job at McDonald's in Topeka, Kansas. This was way before I was born. And McDonald's, this is when there were like 10,000 McDonald's in the world or something.
Sure.
And he had a chance to open up the first franchises in Seattle. It would have been a ton of money.
Yeah.
And the decision my parents made at the time was like, oh, that's a little too risky. We should probably go back to Manhattan, North Dakota, and raise a family. Well, just think of what their life would be like now. Right. That's so. I don't know if it's a family trait to like take the road, the most attractive, safe option or not. But yeah, that's. I would like to try to, take the decision. I would like to make the decision I'm a little more fearful of moving forward. Yeah.
Interesting.
But what's interesting is so this safe approach I take means that I find myself oftentimes in organizations that are viewed as relatively safe. Like nowadays I'm at the Los Angeles Times. It's 130 plus year institution. But then I find myself being the rebel within that safe job.
Sure.
Who's like trying to challenge what we're doing there, and create new products and experiences there.
I mean, I think that's a really important role. First of all, I wouldn't have a business were it not for people like that, because over the last 20 years, my clients, the brand clients I've worked with, are all people who want a safe corporate job, and they also want to stir some shit up.
Right.
Which is why they come to me, right? And so I'm thankful for that, and I'm glad that exists. But also, in the bigger picture, I think those companies need that too, right? Like not everyone can go out and start their own business, and that's not to say that not that people couldn't, but there have to also be big companies that do things at scale that move pieces of machinery all over the world, and all the stuff that big companies do, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of times when people go on their own, it's because something about them, either a deep passion or whatever it might be, makes it so they almost can't work for anyone else. And and so that's one of the things I very much view myself as an entrepreneur and entrepreneurially minded. but I'm also pretty good at navigating organizations, building relationships, managing up, all
Right.
that.
And
like,
those are
human stuff.
Those are two really important skill sets that are.
So if I
different.
went on my own and like, you and me and James decided we're going to go create our own media company, then, which is not a bad idea, but I benefit from having hundreds of people to riff off of the resources of that and to improvise within whatever waves of narrative that are happening within the organization about who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
In a smaller group or as a solo entrepreneur, I would struggle to have that to react
Absolutely.
to. I need it's
Absolutely.
like an improv actor by him or herself
Right.
versus in a troupe.
Right.
And I need a troupe.
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk about that at the Times, how that's playing out. Because I know one of the things that you've done since you've been there was build the Dirty John podcast.
Yeah, definitely a big group effort. But yeah,
Of course.
Yeah, we have a new initiative called Los Angeles Times Studios,
Okay.
and that's our production arm. So we partnered with on originals. We partnered with our friends at Herzog and Company. They're the folks behind CNN's the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s
Oh,
decade
cool.
series,
Yeah.
and a bunch of other really great stuff we've seen. And then we partnered with other partners as well. Dirty John was a piece of journalism prepared by LA Times reporter Christopher Goffard, following the story of a con man in Orange County, and who marries this woman Deborah, and then her attempts to get her life back together, and then ultimately they get some revenge on him. This performed super well. We had 23 million listens on
Wow.
the podcast. One of the top podcasts, 2017. And then more recently got optioned by NBC Universal. Not optioned, purchased. And it's going into development. Connie Britton is playing Deborah in it. So we have a 2-year deal with Bravo, and then there'll be a companion documentary series on Oxygen.
That's amazing.
So what's cool about it, is that we're mining 100+ years of great intellectual property and turning that into entertainment product that we can better monetize.
Yeah.
That goes, that's counter to what most people would think of from the LA Times. So,
Sure.
we happen to be coming out of the gate with a few hits, but we'll definitely have some strikeouts too. And so again, per my, strategy to take the safe route within a set of exciting options, creating this entertainment product is super exciting, but to mitigate our risk and to play it safe, we'll probably continue to develop more narrative podcasts, some of which will go on to make it through the development cycle and find their way to a Cineplex near you or whatever.
So talk about what that means to have, so that show's a hit, which if you were on your own, right, that would be a game changer. Meaning, it puts you on the map and you're able to build, right? If you're an entrepreneur building a podcast or a content business, and you had a Dirty John, right? Like all of a sudden you're in a different business. So, but what does that mean in the context of a big organization like LA Times?
Yeah, I mean, well, first we couldn't. I don't even know if that success would be possible on our own. Because we needed we co-produced that with our friends at Wondery Media, a really great network here, and it's the perfect storm of a great story, compelling story that connects into conversations people are having about the relationship between men and women and the bad actors amongst men sometimes. That was serendipitous for the content's success. Also, Wondery's great network of shows gave it the initial burst. Apple got behind it and started promoting it because the LA Times is on it, and they like the idea of kind of legacy media consumers who read the LA Times, maybe listening to their first ever podcast, which I'm sure of those 23 million listens, a lot of them are the first podcasts that I ever listened to. Yeah. So within our organization, though, it's tough. We and it's the reason why I love journalism. Why back when I was a youngster, I always wanted to be a journalist. We can talk about it if you want, but they're not into like monetizing product. They're there to like tell the stories that the community needs to hear and to report accurately and fairly on those things. So there was, there's some, I don't want to say resistance, but some, it's not as easy as it might be at other media companies where everyone is just trying to figure out how do we slang this content to make money to keep the doors open. Folks here, we have a steady religion about what journalism is,
Right.
and it's tough. So you asked me what it's like within the LA Times. I mean, wins help. So we got a big win, and now there's some momentum to do more, and we got to figure out how we're going to do it in a way that respects what journalism is all about, but also keeps the lights on.
Well, because that's one of the things, I think the challenges of innovation within these big companies, right, is that small wins from an innovation perspective are really important, right? But from a financial perspective, they don't matter too much, right? Even in, I don't know what kind of money Dirty John made, but like when you're a publicly traded company, you need consistent, steady growth. These kind of one-off things are sometimes even counterproductive.
Yeah, right, because it makes the next quarter more difficult, or the year-over-year part.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, that's why I'd love to say, I'm like I say, I've figured this out, but in my role at the LA Times as, head of strategy, I'd like to figure out how do we create a larger number of smaller bets, mitigate risk, but also to get more data on what works, and there's and just have more opportunities for serendipity that can happen. Again, just like whether it be going to Israel or whatever random things I like to do to increase my network, I think large organizations, if they can metaphorically take down their walls and collaborate with more people outside of their walls, good things can happen. Yes, that product that was the focus of your effort is important. It's good to have focus. It generates enthusiasm and momentum. But also not having such tunnel vision to say that success, rides or dies on that project. It could be that, some experiment we do on the side doesn't work, quote unquote, because it doesn't generate revenue or make its money back, but maybe it was the kernel of some other thing that totally shifts our whole business and changes the entire game. Yeah. I think I would like to have more of that mindset. The LA Times is moving from a publicly traded company more now to a privately held company. The sales being put through right now, I believe. I think I'm really excited about the new ownership. Additionally, no matter who the new owner is, I'm excited about private ownership because there's theoretically more opportunity for that sort of experimentation.
Let's go back a little bit to how you got to this point. So one thing I learned about you reading up that I didn't know in our friendship was that you'd been a White House intern.
Yeah.
For the Clinton White House.
Yep.
So what'd you learn from being from a White House internship?
That was that was the end of the Clinton administration. So most of the staffers were using their vacation days so that they could work on the campaign.
Okay.
So it was pretty funny. I was like very self-managed.
End of the second term?
End of the second term, yeah. So this was during the recount and all that. I was in the room next door to the when Gore conceded the election.
Wow.
Was working on a report by myself.
Yeah.
What I learned there, I learned that that was a rare thing, as a kind of a hotshot kid growing up, and I did well in my small pond, big fish in a small pond kind of youth.
Yeah.
There were a lot of stellar kids who were interns there, and what I learned there was actually sometimes pick your spots on when you're going to try to peacock out there and show who you are. That was probably one of the least visible things I'd ever done. I just worked my face off on some e-commerce report that we were doing that talked about the role of e-commerce from 1992 to 2000, and I just didn't get paid. I just drank free White House soda and ate a $1 McChicken for lunch every day. And it was on a solid budget of about $12 a week for food.
Sure.
And just working hard and realizing that short-term investment into what appears to be a prestigious internship will be something that people will continue to ask me about 20 years later.
Yeah, of course.
Which is kind of cool for someone who likes to entertain and be on stage and be the life of the party. That was the intangible lesson I got from that was, you don't have to do that every single time.
Right.
There's time to take a cycle.
Yeah, sure. I mean, seems like such a once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had you, like, were you thinking about that as a step towards a life in politics?
Yeah, I mean, I'll always have some involvement in that. Right now I'm involved with a group called New Leaders Council that's developing professional development for progressive leaders. We have a really cool event coming up June 2nd at Self-Help Graphics in Los Angeles, a fundraiser. So check that out. But I'll always have some role in there. I think I'm less interested in being elected office and just rather serving in whatever capacity
pull the
I can.
strings.
No, I mean, not even from that. Just from a service, the same thing that appealed to me about, hip hop that we talked about earlier. Is I think there are certain, there are people in all fields that are there to serve, and there are others that are there to take. And I'm interested in the ones that are there to serve, and that includes politics.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up hip hop again, because I know you were you're friends with the Rhyme Sayers crew and have been involved with them over the years. What's first of all, for anybody that's not familiar with Rhyme Sayers, is there a favorite song out of that crew that people should check out?
Oh man, I don't know. There's so much good stuff. I mean, I check out the new Evidence stuff is so good. But Atmosphere, Dilated. There's so many great artists there. For me, it all goes back to old school stuff, like the first, early Atmosphere stuff, like Scapegoat and songs like that are really what got me excited. The first time I saw Atmosphere in concert was at a student union with 6 people in the audience.
No way.
Yeah, and I read about it in the source. I'd read that they had more hits than the Twins on Unsigned Hype, is what the review said. That was on the sticker. I said, wow, the sources must be good.
Right.
Must be good. And so that, my relationship with those guys has evolved over the years, in part because of social media. So it's like, my friends and I will be the guys in the shows in LA or New York or Chicago or wherever I lived at the time, wearing a Twins hat, always representing Minnesota when the Minnesota artists come through. And eventually over time built up, relationship as acquaintance with some of the artists. Some of my friends ended up doing work with them on the label side. I built a website for them, a hip-hop karaoke website called Atmosphere Karaoke.
No way.
And it's gone on and on and on. Supporting their festival, supporting the work, and just blossomed into a friendship over time. But what's, again, back to the serendipity mantra that I have, is that, I could just be another guy who goes to a show, but even at a show, I'm seeking genuine connection with whoever it is on stage or anyone that is open to a genuine connection. And so even even artists that I grew up, coming of age in college, admiring and wanted to be around and wanting to be like, I could still seek to serve them, could still try to support their artistry, big up their releases, be a genuine human being toward them, and over time, some of the time they'll end up being some of your closest friends. Sure. And they'll end up coming to your wedding, and you'll it'll be a deeper relationship than retweeting.
Yeah.
But I social media gets a bad rap because it's said that it's about superficiality or making people feel lesser than you and bragging. I see that side of it, but that's not been my experience. My experience has been it allows for serendipity of positive outcomes that is not a part of any other medium. You hand me 1-year-old articles from rap pages or something, and some serendipity can come from that. I can say, oh, Josh Levine wrote this. I'm going to hit this guy up. I have a story like that. One of the reasons I got in hip-hop early on, I read Bomb the Suburbs and No More Prisons.
Yeah.
And so I sent, when I moved to Chicago after college.
That's Skiz?
Yeah, Upski.
No, Upski.
Yeah,
that's
so
right.
I wrote Billy or Upski a physical letter after I read it. He had his address on the first inside cover. So I wrote him a physical letter saying, hey, I'm moving to Chicago, man. Anyone I should meet? And he goes, yeah, meet my buddy Max Benitez. Max Benitez, he was doing a hip-hop documentary. He put me on with a bunch of guys where I met a bunch of Rhyme Sayers adjacent characters who then, that gave me more credibility when I met those guys. None of those stories in particular are so notable, except that you just keep putting positive, friendly vibes out there. The dots will connect down the road 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later that in ways that you never could have expected or even would have wanted to have predicted.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my relationship to hip hop and all my career stuff and how it all weaves together.
That's funny. I think I reviewed Bomb the Suburbs for Herb Magazine.
Nice.
I still have, in my boxes full of shit, I still have the galley proof that
Nice.
Hupsky sent me.
Nice.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, and then he's also really involved in politics too. So yeah. It's and all those things are connected. I think it's about good people. Just connected.
So and then, I know you ran social media. I think when we met, you were running social media, maybe for one of the biggest agencies in the world. I know you've done that a couple times. So what drew you into social?
Yeah, I got career arc wise, I started out doing journalism stuff as a kid. Moved out here after working for David Bowie and the White House, and then didn't know what to do.
What'd you do for Bowie?
Oh, I worked for an internet startup called Ultrastar. That we're
Is that the one that took him
around
public?
Bowie Net and all that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
I came right after they went public. After he went public with himself. And so
were you a Bowie fan?
Yeah, I mean, Bowie's actually the classic example of the kind of person I want to be or would want to be like. In that he's not only because he's amazing and talented and all that, but his ability to reinvent from album to album, from phase to phase, is what makes artists, on the music tip, Bowie, Prince, I'll put Neil Young in that category, I'll put Kanye West in that category, of people who you might not like different iterations of their career. You might not like the Dylan Electric period, but he wouldn't be Dylan if he didn't do it. And
that's how I felt about Yeezus.
Yeah.
When I heard it and like everyone was bitching about it, and like I was like, he's gonna be really glad he made this record in 20 years.
Yes. Yeah, I totally think that. I think that's what I want, in my non-brilliant, non-artist version of that, is I'm trying to create my own, Kanye or Bowie anthology discography of hits and stories. And I'm like, so I want my grandkids or something someday to say, oh yeah, Grandpa Clint, or my friends call me Cleto, Grandpa Cleto will say, he did this thing, he did politics for a while, and then he did the social stuff, and then he did this, and who knows what's next. And I would like what I'm doing 5 years from now to be radically different than what I'm doing right now. Wow. I'd like to be an evolution of it and to benefit from these experiences, but I'll be, life's too short to stay in one lane forever.
Yeah. So real quick, favorite Bowie song?
Oh man.
Or the first one.
I mean, my first experience with Bowie was I had Columbia House or BMG Music Club or something. If you don't send the thing in soon enough, they send you something.
Oh yeah.
And I got like some Bowie album. It was like a mid-career greatest hits album.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was like, man, I don't need this David Bowie. I'm trying to get Silk or Color Me Bad or something. Why do I get this album? And I was like, oh, this is great. And then it only like a year or two later, I was like, oh, these are the beats to every Diddy song, or whatever. Sure. There's like, but I like the stuff with Trent Reznor. That's kind of not commonly thought of as as his go-tos, but I like that stuff.
For me, it's just an age thing. So, I remember the video for Let's Dance, and like that was a big song,
a game changer.
And I love that song. But as far as I knew, that was the first record he'd ever put out.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm 11 or it was like 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I just didn't know that there had been this guy before that.
But isn't that cool? So back to the metaphor of like Bowie's career versus like the lives and careers of normal people like ourselves.
Yeah.
Is that says that he really is reinventing, if that could even be true. Because if the Bowie song was popular at the time that you heard Let's Dance, if all his other stuff sounded like that, anyone you experience it with would be like, oh, this is like a mediocre version of the thing he did before.
Sure.
But when you're constantly recreating, you have the chance to kind of start anew with different audiences. And like in most careers and office jobs and whatnot, it's not thought that you can do that. It's like, oh, it's a super risky thing. They're going to fire you, or they're not going to like it. I actually think that you could argue that the super risky move is to not try to reinvent yourself in your day job, because then you will just get old and discarded eventually. I think the safer move is to not to do it recklessly, but to look for white space or open lanes in that institution and say, hey, we have a need here. You don't know how to fill it. You don't know how to hire for it. I have a displayed interest in it. Let me take 20% of my time to go after that.
Sure.
And experiment with it. And I think any reasonable employer is going to say, all right, as long as you get your other work done, let's give it a shot, dabble with it.
Right.
And if they don't want to say that, then you're probably not in the right job. But you asked me about the social and how I got, back I got in, I worked in politics and kind of doing things I thought were like, and labor unions and stuff that were like very directly positively impacting the world around them. I switched jobs to join what was arguably one of the first social media agencies, M80 out here. And the day before that, I had 2 days before that, I had run the independent expenditure campaigns for 3 school board races here in LA, big time dollar campaigns. I won 2, feeling really good about it.
Nice.
Then the next day, I'm at this job doing a DVD promotion for Revenge of the Nerds, the Panty Raid edition. I thought, what the hell have I done with my life? But
Hey man, Revenge of the Nerds was an important movie.
It was an important movie. But what was even more important to me was that I think then and I think now that like social media has this opportunity to transform the relationship between brands and consumers, governments and constituents, organizations and supporters, and to like actually have a two-way conversation back and forth. Now, the social platforms have been overtaken largely by advertising as they went public and whatnot,
Right.
and that kind of sucks. But I think that that social mindset of using technology or just in-person gatherings or parties or whatever it is to mix up a different relationship between those supposedly in power and those who are not is helpful. So for an organization like the LA Times, that might mean let's keep our standards exactly as they are, but how do we create a better relationship with our readers, our non-readers, for story ideas or capturing their stories or capturing their video and photos.
Do you still feel like social has that that power that you described?
That was very 2009 sounding, but I think it's like, I think that like social media, capital S, capital M, is not, it ain't what it was. But
Right.
I think that like literally media that drives positive social behavior is what I'm interested in.
I get it.
You know
I
what I'm
get what
saying?
you're saying. I guess I'm wondering, like, so from like in theory, what you're saying is true. I guess what I'm wondering is, do you see a path to that practically from where we are today to there being media that has the capability to?
Yeah, I remain bullish on it. I think I have small examples every single day. Yesterday I was tweeting out and posting about this LA Times Festival of Books NEWSTORY Festival, and I'm tagging folks in posts, Linda Perry and all sorts of interesting people who are then engaging with me, and I'm having a conversation with them. I had a conversation with the creator of Netflix's On My Block yesterday.
Nice.
She was going to be at my festival regardless, but I probably wouldn't meet her. But now we had this one exchange, and next time I see her again, it'll be a little warmer than it would have been, and then we'll have another digital exchange probably sometime, and it'll get that much more warm, and then who knows? Maybe there'll be some form of a collaboration down the road.
Right.
I think that's how all of it works. Even you and I knowing each other, it's not really about social media. I don't think we are big tweeters at each other or anything like that. But the mutual acquaintances and friends that we have, those relationships remain warm, even though they might be on the other side of the country or wherever. And then that provides connective tissue for us to keep building and breaking bread and making things happen. So if I take, it's not this panacea of like, social is going to make things easier for lazy people. You still got to go out and do the work and provide value. But I'm kind of excited that like so many people are jumping ship, because that allows those of us who ever really wanted to do it for the right reasons in the beginning, to benefit from that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I get that. I think it's I like the optimism. No, like I do. I appreciate it, because I think it's easy to be really cynical about the whole thing. And I'm reminded of this Wired article that I read back in probably 2009 about space, and it was kind of like, Do we have the ability to colonize space? Should we? Like, it was this big, broad discussion. And the article said, hey, what we should do first is learn from how bad we fucked up the internet and not do that again.
Yeah, right.
And and it was, to me, it was the first time going, oh, there's something wrong with the internet? I had no idea, right? And then once, but, you know, they were like, well, 98% of all email is spam, right? And, you know, most of web traffic is fake, or it's like, there's all this nonsense, right?
Look, I mean, and that's, I need to do more research on this myself, but like I'm we probably screwed up some stuff on the internet, and I think some much needed regulation is probably part of the solution there.
Sure.
But what I choose to focus on in my day-to-day is my part of that.
Yeah,
and like
of course.
the reason I got a bunch of spam in my emails is because I signed up for some stupid contest or something that like
Well, sometimes,
I tried to
like
get something that I shouldn't have, that I didn't deserve through effort. So
Fair enough.
You know, and so I clean up those things and then keep moving.
Right.
And still look at all those things as tools to connect. I mean, I sound like such a grandpa right now, but it's like,
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
do you ever get on like a flight and you're like complaining about your Wi-Fi and shit, and you're like, I'm gonna be in London in 9 hours.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
what's
All the
wrong with
time.
me, right?
All the
So
time.
that's how I feel about all the digital stuff that we're kind of talking about in grouping here. It's like, yeah, I'm complaining about this or that, but like I can communicate instantaneously with anybody, anytime.
Right.
That's the coolest thing ever.
No, I agree. I'm only saying that's not the promise, right?
It could be bigger than that, yeah. Like
Right. The promise of
evolution.
social, you know, has not. I don't know. I spoke at South by a few years back, and on a panel about social media, and it was a great moment because my opening thoughts were that you know, social media is a new opportunity, creates new opportunities for communication that is changing the world, and for brands, it's mostly been a huge waste of money. And like as a marketing vehicle, right? And then this guy stood up in the back and he was like, let me read from Josh Levine's bio in the program for this panel. And it was like, he does social media for brands, right?
He's wasting money.
Yeah, it was amazing that he called me out.
That's funny.
But, you know, but it's, I believed what I said, right? In that that social media is an advertising platform, it is mostly bullshit.
Yeah, but so I can't both be true. Like maybe as a tool to talk at people, it's not as effective as marketers would have wanted, and they didn't make. Maybe, you know, to support your point you made at that festival, maybe the money wasn't there, or the value wasn't there for the money spent. But it's where I think it's way underutilized for brands and individuals as a listening tool. And so, like, if I want to know something that's going on,
Right.
in any geography or on any particular topic or whatever, social makes it really easy for me to get in the room and listen
Absolutely.
to that conversation
Yeah.
without having to spend a bunch of money. And those benefits, there's no, like, you know, accountant with a calculator calculating all the time spent saved by engaging with communities.
Right.
And
And that's actually
listening. That's where I think all the action is. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well,
if I
that's
want-
actually
yeah.
my biggest complaint is
Okay.
that what brands should have done was use those tools 80% for listening,
That's it.
right? And what they did instead is said, oh, we have ad graphics that we need to get out,
Right.
so let's do that.
Right. I mean, a book that I refer to a lot, and I teach at USC also about
Yeah.
social media and stuff. And one of the books, it's old school. It's 10 years old. It's called Groundswell by Charlene Lee. And in
Yeah,
there, she
it's
talks
great.
about. I think there's like just eternal truths in that book about. And she talks about, you know, first you got to identify the people, then the objectives and the strategies, then the technologies.
Right.
So don't start with what am I going to do in Facebook. It's like, where are you going to? That's pretty
Yes.
obvious. But within the objectives line, it was listening, talking, energizing, supporting, and embracing. So if you start with listening, then yes, you do have license to go talk with people and share what you're up to, because you've, just like any good dinner party, you come in there, you ask people where they're from, you know, what chips they brought to the party or whatever, show a little bit of care for them, and then they ask about you, and then you get to tell them about you. But then you can go even further and really work and embrace and support communities such that they almost become indistinguishable from your own effort, and they're ride or die with you. And that is like, if a brand could figure out how to do that, that would really provide them, that would inoculate them from dips in their business, or would give them some license in the event that something does go wrong, that there'd be a community of people who have their back. And
so talk about that. Storytelling is obviously a huge buzzword.
Yeah.
For brands, and I'm still not sure that marketers know what that means.
Well, what I think what really makes marketers uncomfortable about it is this. This is something I learned from Mike Bonifer. He has a really great group called Big Story. You should check out. So he talks about how stories can't be all positive. That's a boring story. Right. So my way of saying it, I think I jacked this from someone, is that like Batman's more interesting. There's a reason why Batman movies are on top of the box office every time. And Superman has a more mixed record of success. And it's that the only thing interesting about Superman is kryptonite.
Right.
He's too perfect. And in his like orphan story is also interesting. So it's only the weaknesses of these characters that actually make them interesting. Nobody just wants to see someone kill it all the time. Right. And the brands want to kill it all the time. They rarely want to say there's a challenge. Whereas the interesting part, so when a company has a misstep or just flat, there's an opportunity for them to it has to be done, you don't want to, badmouth yourself, I guess, but to truly be a storyteller, you need to have several acts in the story. Right. And not all of them are going to be super exciting and make the protagonist look great. So you have to have lulls in the story. And the other thing that makes marketers uncomfortable is, as consumers of stories, we tend to think that stories are always linear, A to B to C, and then it's over. But in reality, there's other forms of storytelling that don't have a beginning, middle, and end, and some stories never end, including that of, or someday it'll end, but like life. And so if you're open to the story going in different directions, you would tell a different story. But marketers put so much pressure on themselves to get the story to end at the result that somebody said in some beginning of the year planning meeting, that the story has to land here. But if you're truly open and truly social and telling stories in that connect to existing narratives and the culture around you, it's unlikely you're going to land exactly where you set out to with your focus at the beginning of the project. And that's scary for marketers.
Yeah, that's hard, I think, for marketers. I always feel like there's, they talk about storytelling and then they have their list of product attributes that they want, mentioned, or it's like, who does a good job in the world of brands? Who's doing a good job telling stories?
I don't have a great answer for you, Josh, because I think it's the organizations that have a very charismatic leader that plays the role of chief market executive. Okay. So when I say that, I mean, to use high profile examples like a Steve Jobs when he was alive or whatever. It's that because I can't, unless the very top of the organization is leading, is comfortable with shaping the story, it becomes a story by committee thing, and then it loses all its weight. There aren't a lot of good examples. I think there aren't. I think that the good examples are individual entrepreneurs and small businesses that are. There's all kinds of cool examples of that. There's a woman who's speaking via live stream at the festival named Bethany Yellowtail, Native American woman who creates fashions that are around her culture and heritage in a non-exploitative, shitty way. Yeah. And she's a big activist. She's super cool. I've never met her. I just have been following her work, and I think the way, that's super cool. It's also the name of the brand is B Yellowtail. It's her. So of course she can move that. Or the apron company are Headley and Bennett, which outfits the aprons for almost all the great restaurants.
Oh, cool.
They have this they've turned aprons into this really cool story. But again, when companies get to a certain size, I don't know how they do that. I think it really takes like a leader at the front who says, "This is a story. I have a story, and that's the story we're telling."
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah. You said something that I want to talk about. Oh, yeah, you quoted Mike D on Twitter.
Oh yeah, well you like the rebel thing, yeah.
He said, I'm interested in trying to do things that I feel I have no business doing.
Yeah, that was in a Vulture interview with Mike D, and I
So
tweeted, yeah.
Give me an example from your own life.
I mean, well, helping produce podcasts for the Los Angeles Times. I had never produced a podcast before. Yeah. There's all kinds of great people, including a couple in this room, who had, a year ago had more license to do that than I did. I mean, one of the biggest secrets as one ages is that like all the people, the adults that we looked up to, we thought they knew something we didn't know, and the truth is nobody knows anything. Yeah. My wife and I just bought our first house. I'm doing handyman stuff around the house. I hired a handyman to do some stuff, and I didn't think he fixed anything any better than I did. So I realized he's just making it up too. Yeah. We're all just making it up. Yeah. And so for me that means all the things we mentioned. I am not from the Bronx nor from South LA, but I claim my spot in the hip hop world and serve where I can and enjoy that culture and that community. I'm not a journalist, yet I am one of the most passionate advocates for high quality journalism out there, and I'm way more open to that conversation than most journalists are. I'm basically their hype man in a lot of ways. Yeah. And so I'm constantly doing it, and I don't think that takes away any credibility from me to say, what Mike D said about doing something that you have no business doing, because if you're doing it now, you have the business of doing it. As long as you do things with respect and a little bit of humility, you can sling just about anything out there.
Nice. And then. Okay, one last question before we get to the lightning round. You said something else on Twitter. You said today will be 20 years ago. What will you wish you had started right now?
Yeah, that was a quote from this really cool woman named Bailey Hancock. And that was a reminder to me. That was me kind of putting myself on blast, saying, start the thing now rather than do, I told you this depth versus breadth thing that I'm constantly grappling with in my own brain and career. Sure. And I wanna do more experiments. So one of a concept I've been toying with, and I haven't really baked it out, is the idea of people talk about working on your mental health. I happen to have pretty healthy mental health, so I want to work on my experimental health, and I want to do, whether that be quarterly or semi-annually or whatever, like pretty deep dives on creating some product, and I want to also use it as a way to build and maintain and strengthen networks. So if I identify a key person in my life that I want to work with, but because they don't work at the other times or because they got some other thing, we're unlikely to work together. Let's come up with an idea. Let's knock out a prototype or a proof of concept, get it out into the world and see how people react to it. Mainly for the purpose of learning. Now, if it happens to turn into revenue, that'd be really cool too. I like revenue, but far more interested in getting feedback on it to learn to apply to that endeavor, to my core 9-to-5 job, or any other serendipitous things I discover along the way. And I'm just collecting stories and experiences through experiments.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. Can't wait to see the experiment.
Well, maybe we'll have to do one together.
For sure.
I do this now, but I want to do it with more publicly. Okay. I guess, right? Because then there's more opportunity for someone else to say, "Yo, Clint, I saw you talking about blah blah blah. I want to get down with that. I have graphic design skills to bring to the table." Boom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, let's get to the lightning round.
All right.
So tell me one decision that changed your life forever.
The decision that changed my life forever was to go to this Washington journalism conference in high school. That sounds pretty boring. What was interesting about it is I met some girl from LA. It was like a camp romance. And that led to me having in my head that LA is a place that I might want to be many years later. Right?
Interesting.
And it got me, and it's the first time I had been to either coast,
Yeah.
so expanded my whole thought about who was in the world, and met a lot of cool people from around the globe at that particular event, and just really changed my whole. It kept me from my small town. Any remnant I had of small town mindedness, it really kind of converted me to a global citizen.
Nice.
Yeah.
You just reminded me, you're the second White House intern I've met.
Okay.
Because I was, what year was that? It's about 97, 98. I was invited to meet a group of Harvard Business School students
Nice.
who were out here on a trip, and Monica Lewinsky was there.
Okay. All right.
And like nothing else was discussed except for her. Like everyone was like,
I'm sure.
yeah, that was crazy.
Well, I mean, again, like the serendipity, you never know. I mean, I don't know Monica Lewinsky, but I'll say like the work she's doing right now, anti-bullying and stuff.
Yeah.
This work that she wouldn't have had she not had to go through
course.
all the shit she went through.
She got bullied pretty heavily.
And the truth is, I mean, I don't know what's in her. I hope that she's in a good place. And I'll say that like she's found like a vocation.
Yeah.
Like she's like literally making a big difference in a lot of people's lives in a way that there's no way she would have charted. Clearly, nobody would put on themselves that kind of public scrutiny. So, you just got to keep rolling and improvising. I think she's a good example of that.
That's right. Okay, complete this sentence. I don't have talent. I have blank.
I don't have talent. I have friendliness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a true statement.
Yeah. I think, it's one jam. It's, even in all the jobs I've worked at, I've always left positive relationships and good networks there, and continue to try to shout out those employers and stuff. And it's a mixed record of success, and some of those jobs are better than others.
Of course.
But for myself and on their end. But I basically have this feeling that if we ever met, even if we didn't have a great experience, you're on my team. Because if you do well, I'm somehow related to that energy, and I feel like I have the ability then to reach back out to you and do that with humility and a sense of service, and I might be able to benefit from that success. I want everyone, and then by extension, anyone I haven't met is just someone I'm one conversation away from having met. So I just want everyone to do well, and I call that friendliness.
Okay, I like that. So if I worked for you, what's something I would hear you say over and over?
What I say all the time, I gotta quit saying it, is
Give one more.
I say this. Well, I probably shouldn't say this, but... And then I say something I probably shouldn't say. And it's usually some hearkening back to some personal story that I think relates to the situation at hand.
No, I think that's actually an important thing to say. Right? I think, from the training I've done in sales and leadership and all that stuff, right? I think there's a benefit to... There are ways you can give yourself license to say things that are important and necessary, but depending on how they're delivered, they could derail the conversation.
Right.
So I've often said in sales meetings, I also say, hey, I know you're not supposed to say this in a sales meeting, but here's the truth, right?
Right.
And that's served me really well. Sometimes.
That's totally right. I mean,
not.
and I get all that, basically like changing the rules of that conversation to
Absolutely.
allow for truth to come through.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I say that almost every conversation or meeting. And
Okay.
This young woman who works for me who calls me out every time. She's like, I know, you just say stuff all the time.
Who would you be most excited to learn as a fan of your work?
Oh, man. I'm trying to figure out who they... You know what I like people... I would like someone to appreciate the variety of my work who's also across a lot of other variety. This is a weird example, but like maybe it's because I'm working at the storytelling festival. But like I'm making a list of the people who I think are killing it across various mediums. And a lot in the entertainment world, that would be like everything from Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, to Steve Martin, to whomever. And I think it's like. I to Oprah. I think it's cool when people who can accomplish success and entertainment and really serious kind of justice efforts, and so there's a long list of those people, but I hope to someday join their ranks.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite city to travel to?
Oh, my favorite city to travel to is New York City.
Nice.
Just the energy there is unparalleled, and I just feel like every day there is 3 days worth of days.
Yeah. New York's one of those places that, I've been there so many times, and I'm sure you have. And like once in a while, you'll discover something new, a different part of town, or like, just some.
Well, the same block
energy
will
or
be
something.
different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that
year over
too.
year. That's the other thing. My most underrated city though is Minneapolis.
Mm.
So big up to my adopted hometown. The more arts per capita, super underrated music scene, super underrated culinary scene, and it's like a colder Austin, Texas, and best kept secret in the United States.
As a claimer of Minneapolis, favorite Prince song?
I mean, he didn't do the song, but I'm just down with Sexy MF. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. That's my jam. I'm down with the whole catalog, but
Of course.
yeah, Constant Stream.
Yeah.
That's just a fun time in my life growing up. That song. But there's so many others.
Love Prince.
Yeah, the best.
What's the last great book you read?
The last great book I read. Gosh, one of those, like most, I've heard this, other people say this in your podcast, like they got like 5 books going on at one time,
Do you do that?
Yeah, I mean.
I used to do that until I switched to Audible.
Oh yeah, that'll keep you focused.
Once in a while I'll switch.
Yeah.
If there's a book that it's not happening for me and sometimes I'll come back to it.
Cool.
But I pretty much just go one at a time now.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think it'd be good to just have completion. I read a bunch of really good books as part of this Seth Godin Alt MBA program thing. The one is The Art of the Start.
Oh yeah,
was a good one.
Yeah, Guy Kawasaki.
Yeah, and
Love
I can't remember the name of this other book, but I kind of into like parables about business. Mm-hmm. Or my favorite books of all time generally have a character, I guess this mirrors this conversation, who like has very strong feelings about one thing and then has an experience and then changes course, like.
What's an example?
Like as a kid, my favorite book in high school was the autobiography of Malcolm X, and how the changes in Malcolm's life.
Sure.
Or in fiction like Siddhartha or books like that. Like I think, just because I think that's the life. I think that's more true to our actual human experience, that you can get set in your ways and live one kind of one directional life, but I think it's a lot more rich to continue to discover and reinvent and to look at life in chapters, Yeah. And I don't know if that's school or whatever, going to traditional schools, but high school is 4 years for me, college is 4 years for me, and I kind of think in 4-year blocks.
Interesting.
I think maybe that's a good thing, for better and worse. Or same thing, like sports. I played, a different sport every season, so I try to do that in my life. What's this season? It's going to be this experiment. This season, I'm gonna run.
Yeah.
But then I don't really like running, so I'll quit doing that after that season, and I'll do something else.
Okay.
But I like books that celebrate that.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. You mentioned Art of the Start. Guy Kawasaki when I was first starting Rebel, I found Rules for Revolutionaries, which was one of his first books, and that changed business for me.
Cool.
Just reading that, and a lot of what we've built is based on that.
Oh, awesome. I mean, a super old school book I read a long time ago that I love is called Commodify Your Dissent.
Oh, wow.
And it's by Thomas Frank, who went on to write What's the Matter with Kansas and all these kind of political books. It's a compendium of articles from a alternative journal called The Baffler. But what's cool about that one is it talked about, I bring this up because of what the book you just shared, because it talked about how how business co-opts the language of rebellion.
Yeah.
And uses it for business purposes.
Sure.
But I genuinely like that kind of business speak.
Right.
But I also like that I heard like the underpinnings of the research that led to that adoption of why Che Guevara shirts are made in China and sold at Urban Outfitters.
Right.
And and I like that. That gives me like a bit of a healthy skepticism about talk of revolution in business.
Sure.
While I still enjoy and in fact espouse some of those same principles myself. It's a cool self-awareness, right? Check out Commodify Your Design.
I will. That's cool. What movie have you seen the most in your life?
Most frequently?
Yeah.
Well, I've probably seen Old School the most, and the reason.
What a great movie.
Or Elf, and I'm not even a big Will Ferrell fan, but Elf I just watch every holiday season, so there's that. And then Old School was like my go-to date movie because it was like everyone's seen it already. Starts out with nudity, so that's good. And and it's funny, so it's like a light movie. So it was like I thought it was like the perfect like come watch movie. It's
not bad.
So I watched Old School a lot.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. or part of Old School.
No, I'm a gentleman. You gotta watch the whole thing.
Absolutely. Who's your favorite DJ?
Favorite DJ? Well, I know he's a favorite of yours too, but I'm gonna say DJ Jazzy Jeff is just from the whole thing, production, the variety, all the non-hip hop stuff too.
Yeah.
Just love him. Got a chance to meet him once or twice. Really nice guy too. But just on a personal note, like people I've met, big Z Trip fan. Just a really fun live show that gets all audiences jumping. And then there's a lesser, not as quite as well known DJ named DJ Abilities who toured with Idea. Oh yeah, the late Idea, on Rhymesayers, and he's still DJing. And he was just like I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but like a DMC champion or whatever he was. Really working the turntable with the scratches and whatnot, and just saw a lot of DJ Abilities in those formative years of my hip hop life. So that's cool. He's a favorite too.
Fun.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, man.
It was fun. Thanks for having us. It was fun.
I'm excited. Looking forward to NEWSTORY in a couple weeks.
No doubt. Come out, see Ali Shaheed Muhammad with Josh Levine on Rebel Radio.
Nice.
At the Festival of Books.
And the rest of the festival.
Hell yeah.
Definitely.
It's going to be awesome.
Dope.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks,
nice
man.
to see you, man.
How do people get tickets?
You go to the festival website is latimes.com/festival of books.
Okay.
You can see our lineup at /NEWSTORY. And the event is open to the public. And then there's a ticketing thing on there. So as to avoid big lines, you'd have to get tickets to indoor programming.
But some are free.
But it's all free, or there's like a small
free.
ticket fee for like $1 or something to reserve a ticket in advance, and then you can just show up the day of if there's still space.
Cool.
If something as rad as Ali Shaheed Muhammad or the Mobile Panel or some of the other big names, definitely suggest getting on there and getting your tickets in advance.
Right.
Cool.
Yo, that's what's up on Rebel Radio. I hope you enjoyed that one. I know I did. Make sure you hit us with comments, feedback, reviews, all that stuff on iTunes. Go to our, find us on social, Rebel Radio Net. Damn, you would think I would know it. It's been almost 3 years. Rebel Radio Net on Twitter, on Facebook. You can get us on YouTube. We got videos coming up of all the episodes, or a lot of them. And most importantly, come back next week for more Rebel Radio. Peace.